Would have that luxury though to be able to, if they broke a leg and then turn up and say, actually, how much is that to repair my leg? Oh, £1,000. I haven't got £1,000.
Yeah, you do have the option to pay it over a certain period of time. They don't say you've got to pay it there and then.
Right.
I've had to do it myself. And you still have to do it now because I broke a leg. Typical youngster, motorcycle, going too fast around a corner. I broke a leg.
Your own, presumably.
Yes. I broke my motorcycle as well.
Oh, bless.
that was really terrible.
I was going to say, you were more upset about that.
I was, yes. In fact, I didn't even know I'd broken my leg because I was too busy carrying the motorcycle because it bounced into the middle of the road, and I was too busy carrying the motorcycle out of the road so nobody else would hit it before I realised that I'd broken a leg. Yeah, it's incredible what we can do at times.
Mm.
So the point in all this is, I mean, we do have a fund. In the community assemblies, people donate money. Sometimes they do it so much per month. Sometimes they donate it in lump sums. It doesn't go to the people. It goes to providing services.
Right.
So if somebody wants treatment and they can't afford it, then they just ask us, and say that they can't afford treatment from this person, and we pay that person. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. It's the same when we're training peace constables. We have a fund for that, so that we can go off and train new peace constables, and that doesn't come out of our own pockets. The website is slightly different. It costs a fortune to run. You probably know things like that yourself.
Mm.
And maintaining one that size is very, very costly.
If this system grows, let me ask this, because a sceptical person, have to ask these sort of questions, but a sceptical person would say, let's say this grows into very big and everyone's understands it and people donate and there are the peace officers and all of this. Knowing human nature and knowing how governments have become corrupt, presumably corruption almost certainly is going to sort of, even though you're very spiritual and most of you are all going to be following natural law, there's inevitably going to be somebody who misinterprets that or has a slightly psychopathic bent that hasn't been noticed or whatever, but people get into positions of so-called power. How do you prevent that from happening, and what can you do if somebody's wielding more importance than is desirable?
We can't prevent it from happening because we have to be open to all.
Right.
We can't lay down rules which cause people to not be included. The assemblies themselves, because the people meet, so the assemblies are running themselves. Because people meet, these people soon get sussed out.
So when you say that, it just suddenly reminded me. It's a bit like how the Saxons would meet at a moot point,
mm-hmm.
On a moot mound, and then they would discuss things in the open.
Yeah.
So it wasn't secret.
Yes.
Presumably that was the reason, that people could just join and listen to the decisions and the problems of the day. As so and so's sheep seems to have some sort of weird head jolting movement. It's catching on, and what can we do about it? Or there's somebody is rustling away our cows, or whatever it is, in those environments. So presumably that's just suddenly occurred to me. That's exactly the process that you're implementing, which is very old and very tried and tested.
It goes back a very long way. One of the people that we is actually that we follow to a certain extent is the Alfred the Great. Because he has now, I think that I remember somebody saying that John Smith brought this up recently about the 100. You can have 100 people standing shoulder to shoulder have certain rights because they're all in agreement.
Right.
Actually, it is 100, 300, and 600. and you get more rights as you get bigger, your group gets bigger. But you have to have those people standing shoulder to shoulder. They have to demonstrate their loyalty to that part of whatever it is that they're talking about or whatever they're trying to do. We have a declaration in the offing at the moment, which is being put together for us, actually by the Maoris, where they are rather they're sort of in the same state as the Cornish, who are Cornwall is not part of the UK. Cornwall is part of the British Isles. So in theory, really, although most people accept it, in theory we don't have to accept anything that Westminster sends out, because we're not part of England or we're not part of the UK.
I'm reading a book, funnily enough, about the Duchy of Cornwall, and it goes into the history of this. Not that I've managed to retain all that information, but yes, it explains how Cornwall is not actually part of the UK.
That's right, yes. We've got our own historian as well, by the way, so we'll make sure we got one of everybody if we can.
Yeah.
If there's ever a flood, we'll have Noah's Ark built, and we'll get them in one by one, not two by two. We haven't got that many at the moment.
All right. Single file.
A single file only, yeah.
Yeah, just as quick.
But we have, it is a unique position, and this is why I think the Community Assembly started here in Cornwall, because we have a slightly unique perspective on things. The energies down in Cornwall are very much different than they are anywhere else. We've had a lot of people coming to Cornwall over the last 20 years who, a lot of them, to start with, didn't understand why they were coming to Cornwall, but they now are in the community assemblies, so they now found their place. A lot of very spiritual people, but spiritual, you're spiritual, I'm spiritual. It doesn't mean that we believe in any one thing, but we know that there is something that is higher than us.
Yes. At the moment, it's my ceiling, but I know what you mean. No, sorry, that's very flippant. Absolutely, yes. And I think more and more people at this particular time, and I keep saying this, I've never known a time in which, because of the oppression and the tyrannical government in the way things are being forced to the population here in England and across the world, and the decisions that are being made by a very small minority who've never been voted for, I think people are waking up to all sorts of different aspects of life, spiritualism being one of them, or the spiritual nature of life, and as well as natural law and all these things, and asking these very fundamental questions which, when we've been very busy and life has just been tolerable, we've not really had to address. But I think people are now very much addressing this, and slowly it's percolating out that more and more people are doing that. Do you find that?
Yes, where people, a lot of people at the moment, there's almost a stages of waking up. And what we're finding at the moment is there's a lot of people, I'll give you an example of this, that you probably know that a lot of people are chasing around saying we have a constitution, there's a new English constitution. Now, I've never seen an English constitution, never heard of one before now. Where did it suddenly come from? But a lot of people are following this and quoting this, and there's a lot of what I would call red herrings around, that they seem to be there to divert people away from their natural progression. There's a lot of people that are going around with common law. Well, common law is actually part of judicial law. It's interwoven in there, so knowing common law is a great thing. But people only need to know where to find their occupational expert. I'm quoting City and Guilds of London Institute here, because they're great on their occupational expert. You don't need to know it, you just need to know where to find the answers. I've seen a lot of people that have been spending an inordinate amount of time trying to learn common law. Most of these people have been doing it for 15, 20 years. So they know it inside out, and those are your occupational experts. We don't need to spend the next 15 or 20 years learning common law. We just need to know where to find it. Our job is to put the assemblies together so that when one person finds an answer, it goes to everybody.
Right, yes, and that makes sense. So could you just explain then? You just said that there's, and we've heard this, and I have to say I've done a terrible job myself of, as I'm on the path of learning and bringing people like you to help me learn as well as the audience. What is, there's differences between what you might call God's law, natural law, common law. Could you just quickly give us sort of the separation of these definitions?
Well, common law, you've got an awful lot of them. There's an awful lot of definitions and there's a lot to learn. Natural law, here's your total understanding of natural law, and God's law is exactly the same. Do no harm, commit no fraud, cause no loss, and keep the peace. There it is. Here endeth the first lesson.
That was hard work. I have to go and have a sit down now in a darkened room with a bottle of rum just to make get over that. So just say that again. Do no harm, do no fraud,
cause no loss,
commit
no fraud,
yeah,
and keep the peace. Now, really, the first three can be lumped under do no harm.
Yes. That's why I always struggle to remember what the others are, because they sort of go, well, I know it's do no harm. And
yeah.
Have cause no loss.
Yeah, well, you're doing harm if you cause a loss.
Yes.
If you're committing fraud, you're doing a harm. So really and truthfully, you can put it down to two.
Yeah.
We are each charged with keeping the peace. It's not so easy to follow as you think.
No, it's not.
But it's a learning process which people go through as time goes by. So they park their car on the street. Have they actually blocked somebody in? Are they giving somebody enough room to get out of their driveway?
Mm.
Okay, so, that's things that you have to start turning your thoughts to, am I causing harm, or am I causing, loss, am I committing fraud?
Yes.
Okay, if you contribute to council tax, and you know that they are committing fraud in trying to force you to give up your money, are you then committing fraud because you are contributing to their coffers?
Well, yes, that's it. You're keeping the scam going if it's a scam.
Exactly.
If you know differently, then I guess it's your humble duty to let other people know that it's not right, and to be honourable to all parties by not abiding, I guess.
That's right. Yes, you've still got to stick to certain rules, because you've still got to offer to contract with them and to negotiate a contract with them. And your terms are quite simple that you want to pay for the services that you're using, and that is the honourable way.
You said earlier that you didn't want to overturn the government.
No.
And you want to work with the government. How do you work with a government that is, as we've seen recently, not working as a government as most people would, if they were to describe how the government is supposedly working, in which we have representation, and you go to your MP and you say, oh look, I've got this problem, I wonder if you should mention this in the House of Commons. People have taken some sort of medical intervention, and it's, people have had some rather nasty effects. And then, the person goes to the House of Commons and either doesn't do it, like so many of these MPs refuse to sort of speak on certain issues, or does do it and everybody else clears off because they don't want to hear the message. So it seems that the government aren't serving the people, and then they're also coming up with, hey, what about these ideas? This would be good. We'll just try and get some more money out of them if we put cameras everywhere, and every time people walk about, we'll call it, saving the planet. If you've got a government that is rogue, shall we say, how do you work with a government that it is like that?
No, we don't want to work with the government. We just don't want to bring them down. You've got to go back to your laws again. If people are happy with the government as it is, and there are a lot of people that want to stay within that because they feel as if they're being protected, If you try to bring them down, then you have. Sorry, somebody was at the door.
That's all right. Do you need to go and?
No, I just went on.
Sorry, I'm being
I'm on the phone.
interviewed. Yes.
They know. Oh dear, what was that one? Okay. The thing with it is that if we try to bring the government down, then those people who feel secure with the government, we are harming them, and we can't do any harm.
Right. Okay.
So we can't bring the government down. Doesn't mean to say that we've got to work with them. We could say that there's certain services we would like to contract with you for, and the community assemblies aren't rich enough to be able to go out and buy loads of lorries to take away your rubbish. So we would have to contract with them to take our rubbish away. People could do it themselves, but then what if they haven't got a car? What if they can't take it to the dump? What if, we have to think of people like that. So all the time you have to think of everything that you're doing. And this is what makes natural law, God's law, so difficult to work with, in that you have to think.
Presumably reason. Yeah, and absolutely. I was going to say, presumably reasoned argument is what will eventually make tyrannical governments irrelevant if people are able to see the frauds, see where they're being dictated to and don't actually have a choice. And your reasoned arguments will say, look, you can have that. It's entirely up to you if you want to be monitored by cameras and everywhere you go, blah, blah, blah. But over here, we're working on ways where we don't have to worry about that because natural law comes into play and they can fine us if they like, but there's this mechanism that we have that says, thanks very much, but I don't think we contracted to be filmed or contracted to limit our progress here and there.
That's it.
And so presumably, people would come to that conclusion.
Yeah, you've got one other thing that comes into play here, and then that even a law, laws and acts and legislation, they're all different. But a law, which is basically termed as your birthright, even a law can come under question if you apply your mind to it and it doesn't make sense.
Right.
So you can get rid of laws if they make no sense. Now it could be that a law was put together in 1066 or anything else other than that, but doesn't apply anymore.
Yes.
So if your logical mind says, look, that has nothing to do with modern day life and living, can you prove that it has anything at all other than it's still on the statute books? And you can challenge it that way.
Yeah. So when this is the problem, isn't it? We've got law and we've got legislation.
Yeah.
And it can get confusing when we're talking about natural law and then what's legal, isn't it? That's one of the issues because you can get wrapped up. So what's your opinion then, or do you work with trial by jury?
Yes, because we have the community courts, and we've had a few of those as well. This is where we have to train people up, and again, where we need experts to help us make this work. But we are courts of record.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Which is the important thing.
That's right. Yes.
Because my understanding is magistrates' courts are not of record. They don't record it.
No, they don't.
Which a lot of people would find a bit weird.
And a magistrate court can only deal with law.
Right.
They can't deal with civil matters. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so when somebody wants to charge you council tax, that's a civil matter. Why are they going to the magistrates' court?
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah. Why do they?
Well, I don't know, because they're rubber stamping it.
Yes. But is that because they actually are not really going under there because the magistrate's not under oath?
That's right. Yes. So, even if you attend there, even if you put your rebuttal in and you attend the magistrate's court and you say that have they received and have they reviewed the rebuttal that we put in? Is there a rebuttal of our rebuttal from the council? They will say no. and then right at the end of it, they will say, we are satisfied that the law has been upheld, and that the council, and you must pay your council tax. It doesn't matter about the law as far as they're concerned. They're not following the law.
Right.
The law, if you put a rebuttal in and it's well argued, and they have to answer it, and then you can put your rebuttal in again on their answer, then that's the way things should be followed. They're not doing that. They're completely ignoring it.
So to go back to your court of record, the trial by jury that you're setting up. So you're setting up these courts, which is a court of record.
Yeah.
And so, how does that work for people? I mean, what I'm getting to is, will the law of the land, or the legal system, I should say, it's trying to keep these terms clear for people can follow them. But does the legal system, as it stands now, accept the decisions that you are putting that come about as a result of the trial by jury, that sort of an assembly jury, assembly trial? Do they accept?
Well, what should happen is, or what does happen is, that our records then are taken to the courts themselves to be recorded.
Right. Oh, okay.
Okay, that's all there is to that part of it. When it comes to getting anything done, if we take it along to the police force and say this person needs to be arrested because this person needs to give restitution or whatever, and we're going to need help with this, then they will turn around and say no. They don't cooperate on that level, which is why we really need our own people out there. We've got too few at the moment. We're hoping to recruit more. As far as the effectiveness of the courts so far, we have achieved an effect in that councillors have been dismissed.
Right.
So
these are more civil matters. They're not criminal matters.
No, they're not.
No. Yeah. So I'm just because the thought of somebody getting somebody violent into because they'll go to a proper Crown Court or criminal court, whatever it is, anyway.
Yeah.
Presumably, and it's not your place, I guess, at this stage to operate that system, because a violent person's not going to hang around by a few nice people.
Yeah, you have a point again in natural law where a jury can try a person, however they can't take anything away from them. They have to get that person, if they're found guilty, they have to make restitution. So it's a little bit difficult, and you can't get anybody locked up.
Right.
Okay, but you can get satisfaction from them in some sort of way, that as long as you get some sort of satisfaction out of it, and where we had people dismissed from the council and that sort of thing actually going on, then that gave comfort to the people that had been wronged.
Although you could argue you've taken his job away if you've been dismissed.
Yes. That wasn't us that was taking it away, if you like.
Right.
Okay. We put the case to the council. The council were involved in, our decision making, so they made the decision as far as that is concerned. But you have to also think that if that person stayed in their job, would they harm more people?
Yes. Well, if they can perpetuate the frauds of council tax and things like that without giving you a chance to negotiate. Excuse me. We're running out of time, so to just sort of pull this in. What's the big picture here? I mean, if you were able to project into the future of so many years, whatever it is, what would be the aim and ambition for the assemblies?
If I could do that, the aim and the ambition is it's never going to be taking over anything. It's just to give people back their decision making, so they got control over their lives again. Like I said, we don't actually do anything other than people say that they want this done or that done, and then we try to actually do it. So our ambition is governed by the people, what the people want.
Mm.
We had a recent referendum with regards to the Assemblies of the World, which we've now created, and we're working on the website now. The Assemblies of the World, we had to ask if we could make these because it wasn't within our remit. We got for those people that actually replied to the question, yes or no, can you tell us whether you want it? We had 1% saying no because they thought we were trying to take over the world again, and they've got a valid point there. So we've had to change what we do on the website, or we've had to change our emphasis on the website to say, yeah, we're not trying to do that. We're trying to link people together.
Yes.
But we had 22% return say yes, they were for it. Now, we don't work on a constitution. We don't have a constitution. We're a private members association. We are there for the members. The members make their own rules and regulations. And this might be, somebody described us as a chaos, the perfect chaos. And it is chaotic sometimes, but in actual fact, synchronicity takes over, and very much people adopt a single way of operating, a single way of living. And because we're keeping everybody in touch with everybody else, so one person finds something out down the road, and then within a week, everybody in the world that's part of the assemblies knows about it, because it's been shipped out.
Yes.
It also helps to protect people, because if there's wrongdoing in one country, it gets transmitted to others.
Is it? I'm just going to try to formulate my words here. Does this work at this stage where we are now with the chaos of the world anyway, better in smaller tight-knit communities so that everyone's on board, like villages and small towns, if they understand it all, their overall community can work quite well. Whereas in a city, you've got such a mix of all sorts of people, whether they're coming in and they're coming out, and there's some people in the daytime, some people at the night, some people do live there, some people don't, in which it's such a fraught environment. Is it better that it works in smaller communities that are physically located together?
Yes. And when it comes to metropolitan areas, they have to be divided up so that you get down to smaller and smaller villages. So that everybody, once you get to a village size, where everybody, or a local assembly size, where everybody knows what everybody else is doing, then you pretty much reach your target. So at the moment we have, for instance, Community Assembly of Salisbury. Let's say it's a medium-sized town, but that could be split down even more. And Salisbury has actually grown quite well. They're doing a lot of good stuff up there. Yorkshire has had to change the way they've changed the way that their assemblies are formed up. So instead of having Yorkshire as the main assembly, Yorkshire is an overall communications device, but then you've got the ridings coming in. So they split the Yorkshire down into the ridings, and those ridings are part of the community assemblies, and they become the regional assemblies. So, if you like, Yorkshire's just become a country.
Right. How does it? How do you cope with, say, as we have a multicultural society now with lots of different enclaves, I suppose, or groups of societies who have different backgrounds, cultures, traditions, who may have different hierarchies within their religious traditions, shall we say? How does getting over the natural law concept work with perhaps certain societies that have a more top-down, tiered, or however they're set up situation?
Yeah, if they want a top-down society, then they can carry on as they are. We're not a top-down society.
No.
We live it as it's a bottom-up, and that really isn't bottom-up because you've got to turn it upside down, so it's still top-down, but it's just the mass of people are on the top.
Yes.
It
Inverted pyramid.
That's right, yeah. It works extremely well. We thought there were going to be a lot of problems. There isn't. If there is a problem anywhere, somebody gets on the phone. We have a central unit for dealing with that. Again, we're, the pig's belly, we're the lowest of the low. But we have to work day and night sometimes to actually get things to work, get things to go. If everybody accepts what the situation, then as far as we're concerned, there's not a problem. If they've got if they want leaders, then they don't want us.
Right.
And it's the same with, the people that want to come into the community assemblies. If they want to come in just to take information from us, then they might as well just use the website. They don't need to be registered with us.
Yes.
Okay, they might get a newsletter, but they can get all the information they need, even the newsletters they can get from the website. They just have to wait for a few days for it to go up there. We're not interested in people who want to take. We're interested in people who want to give.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Why would you want just people who are going to grab it and go and not carry the ethos with them, or maybe do their own thing? We're coming up to an hour. I don't like really to sort of make these last too long, because people see the time and they think, oh blimey, that's a long time. John, it's been an absolute pleasure to delve into what you're doing and the assemblies. People presumably, they're itching to find out more, can access the website, and well, we saw on the thing it said join, find out more information. I'll put the link in the description. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Richard, for doing this.
Well, it's my pleasure, and hopefully it's answered a load more questions, but I guess there's tons of questions to be answered on the website.
It's actually raised a whole load as well. So.
Oh, good. Oh, well, there we are. I'm sorry about that. I've just doubled your workload. But never mind. It's all good, isn't it? It's like science, isn't it? If you can't ask questions about a thing, your hypothesis is finding answers that somebody else is going to ask these questions.
We need people to ask questions.
Brilliant.
That's the only way we can cover everything.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, John, thank you so much for talking to me and the audience. As I say, links in the description. I will be back with more interesting contributors and guests to forensically question as best I can. But in the meantime, down there in, is it sunny Cornwall?
Yes.
Fantastic. It's I think that where I am in Worthing, it's sunny, so that's the country's got some sunshine, which is what we need. Thank you so much, John. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, from John and I, goodbye. Hello and welcome back to the channel, and thank you so much for joining me on another of my interview series. Today I'm talking to a man a number of people of my viewers have been asking for, so diligently I have managed to track him down. Apparently he's off-grid somewhere in North California, so it's my great privilege to bring to everybody Dane Wigington. Now, before I bring him in, let me just tell you a little bit about Dane. I've got his bio here. It says here, Dane is the lead researcher and administrator for the website geoengineeringwatch.org and is the executive producer for the groundbreaking climate engineering documentary, The Dimming. His background in solar energy and was a former employee of Bechtel Power Corporation, I hope I've pronounced that correctly, and was a licensed contractor in California and Arizona. Dane's devoted the last 20 years of his life to a constant research on the issue of covert global climate engineering operations and the effort to expose and halt them. So that sounds very interesting. We know that our skies are dimming. We sense that. We see the aeroplanes going across and we see all these chemtrails. What's it all about? There's only one man to ask, and he's here. I'm very pleased to say, hello, Dane.
Hello, Richard. Thank you very much for the invitation and your willingness to investigate the global climate intervention issue.
Well, I think a lot of people are waking up to all sorts of things that have been going on, not least as a lot of people have been sort of saying, oh, what's going on in our skies? Are we being sprayed with stuff? Are they controlling weather? What is going on? So let's delve into that a little bit. I was impressed when you said you're living off grid. I think a lot of people these days would like to be well away from a lot of the things like 5G and things that are coming. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you got into this, and then we'll find out what it is that is going on.
Well, I grew up in a very smoggy Southern California, and it was my life's mission to get out of that. So when I eventually reached the wilderness of Northern California and built a large off-grid home, and that's part of what I did for Bechtel Power, was the alternative energy. I worked on some of the first commercial solar plants in the U.S. in the middle of Mojave Desert. But upon reaching Northern California, completing this off-grid home with wind, hydro, and solar power being the primary power source, I was losing extraordinary amounts of solar power from whatever these aircraft were emitting, literally blocking out the sun. Some days, 70–80% of my solar power was lost because of what the aircraft were emitting. Now, that doesn't mean a 70 or 80% loss of visible light, but it means a loss of direct sunlight. And solar power does not function, PV panels don't function with that. So I began to research on the issue of climate engineering, solar radiation management, which the stated purpose is to put light scattering particles into the sky to block some of the sun's incoming thermal energy to slow down the warming of the planet. That's the stated purpose. And when I began to lab test my precipitation to see if some of these climate engineering elements were in the rain, indeed they were, starting with aluminum. And I was dismayed to find that. I hoped I wouldn't find that in my lab test. I continued testing, and the amounts kept going higher and higher and higher until within 18 months of the initiation of my testing, I had single rain events as high as 3,450 parts per billion of aluminum, and that's extraordinarily toxic rain. What was I to do, Richard, except to face this issue that was poisoning literally everything, including every breath I take? So that's what started me on this journey.
Wow, that's quite shocking to, now, I know that there'll be a portion of the audience who already know the sort of basics. I'm coming to this completely fresh, so you'll have to excuse my naivety, and of course my reactions if I'm slightly shocked by all of this. Is this, presumably, is this a deliberate thing, or is this just part of aircraft, the fact that it's flying around doing what they do and it's a byproduct?
Very important question. No, this is not a byproduct of combustion. And in regard to the trails themselves, the condensation trail narrative, which is an absolutely false narrative, we have up-close film footage of these aircraft at altitude taken from another aircraft behind the aircraft being filmed, nozzles visible, turning on and off. Into the discussion. This is not condensation. And we know further, Richard, that all military tankers and all commercial carrier aircraft are fitted with what's known as a high bypass turbofan jet engine. That's a jet powered fan. 90% of the air that moves through that engine is not combusted. It's designed for fuel efficiency. So that engine by design is nearly incapable of producing any, quote, condensation trail except under rare and extreme circumstances. So again, if people don't believe what they see with their own eyes, the film footage that we have at geoengineeringwatch.org under the jet spraying section, if they don't believe what they see with their own eyes, these up-close film footage, nozzles visible turning on and off, there's nothing I can show or tell them that will make them face this issue. But the fact is, this is not condensation. These are sprayed payload dispersions of climate engineering elements, aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese, polymer fibers, surfactants. We now know from our most recent 100 lab test, even graphene is in the range. So this is a very toxic brew that's being dispersed as part of these operations.
Gosh, and is that going across all of the globe or in certain areas, do we know?
The operations are global. Some areas are hit harder than other areas depending on how the weather patterns function through those areas. For example, in Northern California, we're hit particularly hard because the weather for the country historically has moved through this region. It comes from the Pacific Ocean. So that seeding takes place as the moisture moves over the continent, if you will. So, and as far as global cooperation, this is very important. You can't just geoengineer over your own country without affecting the entire world. So there has to be global cooperation. In fact, there is. We have posted at geoengineeringwatch.org government documents, Senate documents. In fact, one particular Senate document, 800 pages long, going back to the late 70s, that outlines this global cooperation even between otherwise adversarial nations. This document further calls for total blanket legal immunity for anyone and everyone involved with these programs, because once you disrupt the weather system, every single weather cataclysm then becomes suspect and a potential liability.
So, presumably, so let me go back. How long has this been going on for?
We know from historical data that these programs were first deployed at scale over the polar regions immediately after World War II. So, Richard, you may remember seeing all the film footage of the World War II bombers leaving massive condensation trails, correct?
Yes, yes.
You've seen this, I'm sure, in film footage. Many people bring this up. We found on U.S. military archival footage, we found film footage of one B-17 filming others in formation above them, some leaving massive trails, others leaving nothing, and one directly above the filming aircraft, leaving a massive plume, was shut off instantly in air as if it was cut with a knife. That plane didn't fall out of the sky. Its engines didn't die. It was clearly dispersing something. They would have had to have been beta testing in World War II in order to deploy immediately after World War II. And we had other aspects of climate engineering that were first stated on the record after World War II. For example, Project Cirrus, the U.S. military's effort to manipulate hurricanes, started in 1947. So the bottom line is all these puzzle pieces connect perfectly. In regard to aluminum, we had Stanford University reporting in their polar studies, they were seeing a polar haze that had aluminum particulates in it, and they couldn't figure out where that was coming from. So again, we have all of these elements fitting together perfectly, and certainly why would we expect that they wouldn't do this? Would they ask our permission first? I think not. Did they ask our permission to detonate 2,400 nuclear bombs without public consent? And they did that, and certainly we know there's so many other items in this category that they don't ask for public permission for anything they do they?
No, absolutely. So there's no way, because as soon as you start mentioning this to anybody, people who are skeptical, I suppose because they believe that, or the world has made them think that it would be absolutely impossible for something like this to happen. It would be so far-fetched that it seems barking. And so their argument is, of course, it's vapor trails. So let's just deal with that. Do aircraft, leave what we see as those very clear in the sky twin vapor trails as they go across?
We're going to ask people to exercise their own sense of reason. And how would you see on a day where you might see an aircraft leaving these trails? And again, we have up close photographs as well of the nozzles, retrofit nozzles mounted on the wing pylons, aimed into the exhaust jet stream to make this look like condensation. But it doesn't take a lot of deductive reasoning to say, well, why is there a grid pattern in the sky one day, nothing the next? If you observe closely, and we can from my remote location because we can hear these aircraft, there's no other noise pollution. And you can see one aircraft leaving a trail from horizon to horizon next to another aircraft, same altitude, same category of aircraft, leaving nothing. And again, the film footage up close of the nozzles visible turning on and off is very telling. And let's add this to the equation. We have virtually the entire global climate science community and governments all over the world stating that we need to geoengineer. That's the science term for this. And I encourage people, if they're trying to research this or bring the issue up to others, use the science terms. That brings credibility. Climate engineering, geoengineering, solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol injection. But under all these categories, what these involve or entail is aircraft spraying nanoparticle dispersions into the sky to mimic the cooling effect of a volcano to provide temporary cooling for the planet. That's the definition of solar radiation management. And again, every single puzzle piece we already have. But the entire global climate science community is calling for these programs to be deployed immediately to avert planetary cataclysm, when in fact, after 75 plus years of these programs ongoing, we know it's already fueled cataclysm, not mitigated it. But isn't it absurd, Richard, that we have, again, governments around the globe, official agencies, elected officials, climate scientists calling for putting jets into the air to spray dispersions exactly like what we see with the exact elements that are showing up on the ground, and yet they pretend that this is some sort of wild conspiracy theory. Is that not absurd?
Well, that certainly sounds completely absurd. I was going to ask you whether they deny that this is happening, and we'll get on to who they are, really, but presumably science, I mean, clearly you're not the only one who's observed all of this and thought, hang on, there's something a bit dodgy going on, and taken measurements and studied it. There must be people across the world who are clamouring for this, if only it was just dimming the skies, but also presumably these particles, like aluminum, or aluminium as we would say, is dangerous for health, extremely dangerous. So my question is, there must be scientists who are clamouring to say, please don't do this. Why are you doing it? And where is the rebuttal?
Okay, you are correct on every level. First, there are increasing amounts of pushback from the climate science community stating this would be a horrific idea. We shouldn't do this, but still pretending that it isn't ongoing. In regard to aluminum, or aluminium, as you would call it, you are completely correct again. It is harmful, extraordinarily harmful to all life forms, period. And although aluminum, and this is the sort of skepticism you see from some, aluminum or aluminium is a very prevalent element in the Earth's strata, and some claim we should expect to see it everywhere. That is patently false. Free-form aluminum, key term, free-form aluminum, does not exist naturally in the environment, period. In order for it to be free-form, it must have been mined,